Hey guys, Brett here, connecting from UbiCentral, and today I'm going to be giving my honest thoughts on the story of Watch Dogs 2. Before we get started, please keep in mind this is my personal opinion, and if you disagree with me, that is completely fine. At the end of the day, we can all agree that Watch Dogs is an amazing franchise, but nothing is perfect, especially the story of Watch Dogs 2. So let's get into it more specifically. Now, the game starts out with you hacking into a CTOS data center as sort of a recruitment challenge. I don't really have an issue with this first mission as it's just a tutorial, but with that said, when you compare it to the first mission in Watch Dogs, it's kind of a disappointment. Actually, a big disappointment. The first game starts out with you in May Stadium beating up a bloody excuse of a human, Maurice. In this opening scene, there is surprisingly a ton of emotion. Maurice is legitimately scared of Aiden and knows what he's capable of, but at the same time, he's also scared of the people he did the initial job for, which also sets the tone not only for Aiden and his story, but also the villains. Not to mention, you meet Jordy Chen, cause a citywide blackout, and escape from the cops, all in the first mission. I honestly forgot how good this first mission was, as it literally sets the tone for the whole game. As for Watch Dogs 2, this opening mission just didn't have any excitement or emotion. Yes, it technically throws you right into the game, but I personally feel it wasn't executed as well as the first game, and it definitely didn't have as many memorable moments. But anyways, when you hack into the CTOS and escape, Wrench puts a bag on your head and throws you into a van. And next thing you know, you're at the beach, and now you're a part of DedSec. Now, I actually really enjoyed this cutscene. You get a taste of what all the characters are like, with the exception of Dushan. His introduction just felt forced and pretty useless, to be honest. Like, what are the odds of him being on that beach at the exact time, and him being there doesn't have any impact on the scene whatsoever. But again, with the exception of him, I thought this introduction was nicely done as it progresses the DedSec characters. Now, after this whole scene, Marcus wakes up wasted with a random girl, and this is where you start to see the tone of the game start to come through. And I love how right after this, he's outside in his boxers, and the music starts playing. It was very well done. So all in all, the tutorial mission was pretty disappointing, but after that, the game starts to find its pace. I don't want to focus on the missions too much, as this video is mainly focusing on the story, but for the most part, I really enjoyed the missions, and I loved how you could tackle them any way you preferred. The mission designs were pretty unique and fun to play through, and Ubisoft deserves some credit for that. But unfortunately, the characters or plot just weren't that interesting, at least to me. Marcus is the main character, and his lines are either hit or miss. I just don't feel invested in his character because we don't know anything about him. He basically never mentions his family, and it's just hard to relate to him. Whether you loved or hated Aiden, you have to admit his story was grounded and somewhat believable. With Marcus, it's just all over the place. It definitely doesn't help that you can kill hundreds of people in a mission, and then in the next cutscene, he's smiling and making jokes. I just wanted more out of Marcus, and unfortunately, we just heard jokes and taking down Bloom's speeches for the most part. I feel like Satara was actually pretty good at the start of the game, but her character just started falling flat. Her contacts had more of an impact in the story than she actually did, and it's a shame because I thought she actually had some potential. Overall, I actually enjoyed Wrench. I wouldn't say he's my favorite character, but he's definitely in the top 3. While he is cringy at times, it's definitely a lot less than Marcus, and it's believable because, well, he's socially awkward. And I know some people may not like it, but I really enjoyed his character design as well. I just wish we got a little more backstory out of him, but he's definitely a character that you care for, which actually leads me to Horatio. Just like Satara, his character actually started out pretty strong. Sure, it felt forced at times, but I thought he made a good addition to the team. Sadly, he barely had any dialogue after the opening mission, and just when his character was getting attention with the noodle mission, he ended up dying right after. His death just didn't impact me at all because he was barely in the game. And not to mention, he wasn't even seen in the marketing. I don't know about you, but I saw his death coming, and again, it just didn't impact me at all. Moving on, we have Josh. I don't think it's a secret that he's my favorite character in the game. Josh for me is the comedy relief, which is pretty insane when both Marcus and Wrench are non-stop machines at cracking jokes. But to me personally, Josh's dialogue was always executed at the right time, and it was never pathetic or cringy. I also loved how he was technically the best hacker in the group, but he was always in the background. He actually made an impact on the story, and he was likable. Definitely underrated, and for that, he's my favorite. And last but not least, we have T-Bone, who actually ended up leaving Tobias in the desert all by himself. But anyways, T-Bone was another one of my favorite characters in this game. It definitely helps that he was in the first game and had a DLC, but thankfully they didn't change him and make him a hipster. He's the same guy we all know and love, and I think he actually played really well with DedSec in this game. As far as DedSec goes, I'm actually going to make a dedicated video on this, but I enjoyed them more in the first game. They just had this mysterious and scary vibe to them, whereas in this game, they're completely different. Which is fine because it's a different city, but I just wish that they explained that more, especially because DedSec is technically a main character. As for the villains, I didn't like any of them, to be perfectly honest. Dushan wasn't intimidating or scary. I didn't even want to hurt him really, which is saying something when he's the main villain of the game. Lenny was barely in the game, and for someone that runs another rival hacking group, that's pretty insane. There was other regular gang groups, but they're forgettable, and same with the tech companies with the exception of Noodle and Titus, and Bloom just didn't really feel like a threat in this game. Sure, they had deals going on with other tech companies, but maybe it's just because Dushan ruined it for me, I really don't know. This game definitely had the same issue as the first, where they had so many villains, and most of them ended up becoming forgettable. Unfortunately, with Watch Dogs 2, the protagonist did as well. There's just so many of them, and sadly, they didn't get enough screen time with the exception of Marcus and Wrench. I think the main characters would have been a bit better if they had more time to be fleshed out. But there's just so many characters in this game, it is kinda crazy when you think about it. And one last thing I want to touch on is the ending for Watch Dogs 2. I thought it was poorly done, just like the first mission. There was just no big moment. You're literally going into Bloom and hacking their servers, but it just feels like a generic mission. And not to mention, the ending where you let Dushan get arrested is just... I don't even know how to describe it. I guess it just goes back to me saying he never really felt like a villain or a threat. No one took him seriously, including Marcus or Ubisoft. I don't want to compare this game to the first Watch Dogs again, but fuck it. The last mission of Watch Dogs, Damien has control of the entire city and he's hacking everything in sight. This was so intense and definitely exciting at the same time. Once you finally confront him, you end up killing him, which I think could have been handled differently, but still, he felt like an actual threat. I mean, the guy was responsible for Jackson getting kidnapped, he was just a dick and you wanted to see him die. I didn't know who Dushan really was and I didn't care. Even if we had the chance to kill him, it wouldn't even matter because no one really hated him. Anyways, those are my thoughts on the story of Watch Dogs 2. I just want to end this off by saying I did enjoy playing through the game and it definitely has its moments, but for me personally, I was more invested in the first story, and keep in mind this is coming from someone who has mixed feelings on Aiden Pierce. Watch Dogs 2 improved on the first game in almost every single way, but sadly, not the story. The new tone was a welcome change, but sadly most of the characters weren't executed well, and the story didn't have any oh my god moments. Again, this is my personal opinion, and you're welcome to disagree. I just wanted to get my thoughts on this and get a discussion going. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all later.